I got this box from steelcitycollectibles1 and 2676. Steel City Collectibles. I don't know what's all that about. Let's see, it's POTUS. Okay, so this is the first 36 president of the US. 54 cards, 5 packs, 1 bonus pack. 2020. $20 for 54 cards. That's like 50 cents on a card. Look at how much space there is in this box. Alright, we got 6 packs, I think. 5 normal packs and then 1 bonus pack. 5 10-card packs per box. 4 card red alloy pack. Packs with a special insert may contain 4 to 6 cards. Okay.
The Great Railroad Strike of 1877. Railroad worker wages had been cut 3 times due to lost revenue from the Panic of 1873. Strikes started in West Virginia and soon spread east and west until 100,000 workers were on strike. As the National Guard was ineffective at breaking up the strikes, President Hayes authorized federal troops to put down the strikes. Federal troops killed over 100 civilians in at least 5 states before the strikes came to an end. Interesting. It's kind of sad that civilians had to die. Trust Buster looks like a midget and a really fat dude. Trust Buster, although Theodore Roosevelt was dubbed the Trust Buster for this use of the Sherman Antitrust Act to break up monopolies, no one used it more often than William Howard Taft. Taft brought 70 cases in 4 years compared to Roosevelt's 40 in 7 years. James Madison, see this Episcopalian, and a boring information here. First president photographed. Although we have a very good idea what our first 5 presidents look like due to numerous portraits painted during their lifetime, the first president for which we have an actual image is John Quincy Adams. The image was taken in approximately 1843, 14 years after Adams left the office. Sherman Antitrust Act looks like a picture of a lot of men. To counter the powerful monopolies that had developed in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, President Benjamin Harrison passed the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. The second section of the act outlined every person who shall monopolize or attempt to monopolize or combine or conspire with any other person or persons to monopolize any part of the trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations shall be deemed guilty of a felon. Purchase of Alaska. I don't really know what language this is, but I think it's Russian. Purchase of Alaska. William Seward, the Secretary of State under Andrew Johnson, negotiated the purchase of Alaska from Russia for a price of $7.2 million. The Johnson administration was ridiculed at the time, and the purchase was referred to as Seward's folly. Since the discovery of gold in Alaska in 1880, over 40 million troy ounces of gold has been mined at an approximate value of $68 billion. That's a lot of gold. Warren Harding, boring information. Hardy smut tariff in the early throes of the Great Depression, which started just months after Hoover took office. Hoover was attempting to stimulate the economy through all means. Unfortunately, signing the Hardy-Smoot tariff, while well-intentioned, only exacerbated the economic downfall. The tariff raised the cost on almost all imported goods in an attempt to raise the sales of domestic products. Oh, so like putting a tax on imports. Inaugural address of William Henry Harrison. On a cold March day where the temperature would not exceed 48 degrees, William Henry Harrison would deliver the longest inaugural address in presidential history without wearing a coat, gloves, or a hat. After delivering his 8,445-word speech, he attended 3 inaugural balls, including one at a saloon that raised over $10,000. By March 26, Harrison would become ill, and on April 4th, he would pass away, concluding the shortest presidential term in US history. He caught a cold and died. Well, why would you do that in 48-degree temps? That seems like a very prideful action. Just keep it short, especially on a cold day, honestly. Interstate highway system. Having seen the effectiveness of the German Reichsautobahnen during his time in Europe, Eisenhower sought a way to introduce a similar road system in the United States. Although proposed for at least 15 years, no progress had been made until Eisenhower got the federal Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 passed. It authorized 41,000 miles of roadway and allocated $26 billion to pay for them. What do I think about these cards? I don't think they will be popular at all. This is just really just free pictures and free information you can get from like Wikipedia. Compromise of 1877. The highest voter turnout occurred in the presidential election of 1876, with 82% of eligible voters casting a ballot. Democrat Samuel Tilden won the popular vote by 200,000 votes and was leading in the Electoral College 184 to 165, with 20 votes from 4 states being contested. In exchange for giving all 20 votes and the presidency to Rutherford Hayes, the Republican Party agreed to end Reconstruction in the South by removing all remaining U.S. military forces from the former Confederate states. Preservation of the Union. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it from freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. I have here stated my purpose according to my few modification of my oft-expressed personal wish that all men everywhere would be free. Abraham Lincoln, August 22nd, 1862. Although Abraham Lincoln did not believe in slavery, he saw preservation of the Union as his primary objective. During his presidency, once the southern states attempted to secede from the Union, he saw elimination of slavery as a mechanism to help win the Civil War and in turn preserve the Union. Thomas Jefferson, first president to lose popular vote and win the election. In the election of 1824, Andrew Jackson won 42.3% of the popular vote, while John Quincy Adams won only 31.5% of the popular vote. As neither candidate had the required number of electoral votes, the election outcome would be determined by the stipulations of the 12th Amendment. With the slimmest majority, 13 of the 24 states cast their vote for Adams, and he would become the 6th president of the United States. Dawes Act. Grover Cleveland did not believe that Native Americans should be wards of the U.S. government and kept on federal lands. He supported the passing of the Dawes Act, which called for dividing tribal lands into allotments and providing them to heads of households. He also authorized federal troops to expel settlers from the Dakota Territory, whom he believed former President Arthur had illegally allowed onto the tribal land to stake claims. First impeachment trial. To learn about this, although he respected his wartime efforts, Andrew Johnson could not agree with Secretary of War Edwin Stanton on his policy to prosecute all Confederates. While Congress was not in session, Johnson relieved Stanton of his duties under the Tenure of Office Act. Replaced him with U.S. Grant. Congress filed articles of impeachment, believing he had misused the Tenure of Office Act and was attempting to undermine the power of Congress. Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. The 14th Amendment provided that all persons born in the United States would be citizens of the country. This amendment was passed with the provision that it excluded Indians from citizenship as they were born on an Indian reservation and therefore not born in the United States. The Indian Citizenship Act passed by Calvin Coolidge corrected this injustice and granted citizenship to without question, as the text states that all non-citizen Indians born within the territorial limits of the United States be and they are hereby declared to be citizens of the United States. First president born in the United States. The first 7 presidents of the United States were born in British colonies. Martin Van Buren, born December 5th, 1782, when he took the oath of office on March 4th, 1837, became the first president of the United States actually born in the United States. Truman Doctrine. In the aftermath of World War II, Harry Truman outlined the U.S. policy towards the Soviet Union by stating, "I believe it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures." In a speech on March 12, 1947, dubbed the Truman Doctrine, the speech was backed by his pledge to contain communist uprisings in Greece and Turkey shortly thereafter. Patent 6469. On May 22nd, 1849, Abraham Lincoln received U.S. Patent 6469, becoming the only president ever to receive patent dubbed by Lincoln, a device for borrowing vessels over shoals. It was a set of inflatable bellows attached to each side of a ship that could be inflated to decrease the draft of the vessel, allowing it to operate in more shallow waters. Unfortunately, the device was heavy and caused boats to sit lower in the water, making them more susceptible to running aground. Youngest president, Tammany Hall. Boss Tom Platt wanted Teddy Roosevelt out of New York as his crackdowns as police commissioner and subsequently governor hampered their political influence. He successfully lobbied to have Roosevelt added to the McKinley presidential ticket in 1900. With the assassination of President McKinley in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt became the youngest president in the United States history at the age of only 42. John Adams. Following information. Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine, issued in the colonization in North and South America, was coming to an end. Its opening statement says the occasion has been judged proper for asserting as a principle in which the rights and interests of the United States are involved, that the American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintained, are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European power. Renovation of the White House. Chester A. Arthur needed money to fund the first major renovation of the White House in almost 70 years. Unfortunately, to raise the required money, he sent 24 wagon loads of furniture, decoration, and household items to auction, scattering White House history across the country. A travesty that Jackie Kennedy would attempt to reverse 80 years later. So I guess there's just random White House memorabilia around, if not destroyed. Gettysburg Address. On November 19, 1863, President Lincoln spoke for 3 minutes at the Gettysburg battlefield, giving what would become the most quoted speech in American history. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. Silent Cal. Calvin Coolidge was famous for answering questions simply with only a yes or a no, leading to his nickname Silent Cal. His brief answers became so famous it was reported that at a dinner, companion once placed a bet on extracting at least 3 words from Coolidge, only to be answered with "you lose" from the president.
Seems like a fellow I can get along with. And what's my policy on all men created equal? I believe the world is equal towards everyone because no one gets to pick who they are born to or in what situation they are born in. Therefore, it is entirely equal in how you start and how you end up because life is life.
Trail of Tears. Although the US government had been forcibly removing native peoples from their land since the Indian Removal Act of 1830, the worst of these removals occurred when Martin Van Buren attempted to move 1,300 Cherokee Indians from their lands in the southeast to modern-day Oklahoma. Nearly 7,000 federal troops force-marched the Cherokees over 1,000 miles in December without proper professions, resulting in 4,000 deaths. I think they chose winter for a very specific reason. Jeez. Atomic bomb. Harry S. Truman is the only leader to use an atomic bomb during war. He defended its use by stating, "As President of the United States, I had the fateful responsibility of deciding whether or not to use this weapon for the first time. It was the hardest decision I ever had to make, but the President cannot duck hard problems. He cannot pass the buck. I made the decision after discussions with the ablest men in our government, and after long and prayerful consideration, I decided that the bomb should be used in order to end the war quickly and save countless lives, Japanese as well as American."
The atomic bomb, whether you believe it was a good idea or a bad idea, it's not really up to you to decide because I also don't believe there are many right or wrongs in the world, just how you justify an action. And if you read into the history of what actually happened during the war and what Japanese politics was like, it is unlikely, in my opinion, though not professional, that the Japanese, as a Japanese, I don't believe I would have submitted to the Americans quickly or war till I died, there is reason to believe that it did save countless of Japanese lives. But that is just opinion and if statements.
Nobel Peace Prize. Theodore Roosevelt was the first of 4 United States presidents to win the Nobel Peace Prize. It was bestowed upon him for his efforts to end the Russo-Japanese War that had been raging for 1.5 years over control of Korea and Manchuria. President Roosevelt offered to mediate between the two countries in the city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where the treaty was signed to end the war.
George Washington, Episcopalian. I don't know what that is. So George Washington is actually my favorite president of the United States, being American, Asian, Japanese. Though I don't know Japanese, unfortunately. He's the only president that had a unanimous vote for him. He fought in battle as a leader should. And not only did he fight in battle as commander-in-chief, he was also in the front lines as well. And he is just a unique leader that has certainly gained my respect compared to most other presidents, though I don't believe the presidency is a very easy job in itself.
First gay president, James Buchanan was the only man to serve as president who was a lifelong bachelor. Perhaps his reason for not marrying was that he was gay in a time when it was socially unacceptable. He lived for 13 years with Senator Rufus King of Alabama and often attended political functions together until King's untimely death in 1853. King was often referred to in political circles as Miss Nancy or Aunt Fancy, which were homosexual epithets of the day. Austin Manifesto, unlike President Fillmore, pro-Southern Franklin Pierce fully supported enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act. In his inaugural speech, he stated the policy of my administration will not be controlled by any timid forebodings of evil. From expansion, the Austin Manifesto was a letter circulated that attempted to justify the purchase Cuba from Spain, and if they would not sell, take the island by force to admit another slave state into the Union, changing the balance of power in the Senate. John Tyler.
Theodore Roosevelt. Now this guy, he's the hunter one, right? I'm pretty sure he is. You know, there's mixed feelings about him being hunter, but he also created the most conservations for wildlife. There is a situation with rhinos, and the biggest party involved with trying to save the rhinos has an interesting philosophy. They're struggling to finance such a act because I believe the amount of defense they need from poachers and the amount of land and the rhinos in the areas numbering like over 1,000 rhinos, and the guy's kind of running out of money. And I think there's a documentary on it on Netflix. So if you want to help save the rhinos, you should look into that because it seems like he's struggling pretty hard. Documentaries can be misleading, though I do believe the character are really trying to save the species, which is commendable. Nan Britton.
In a time when personal lives were kept personal and out of the press, Warren Harding's fathering of a child while a senator and 1 year before he became president was kept under wraps. A tell-all book released by Nan Britton after Harding's death reviewed the affair but was not believed by most. She published a book because Harding's widow refused to continue to financially support her and she needed the money to live. The paternity was not officially proved until 2015 through DNA testing. Uncivil presidential race, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were famous for their hatred of each other, even though due to the election rules of the day, Jefferson served as Adams' vice president. During the presidential race, Adams said Jefferson was a mean-spirited, low-lived fellow, the son of a half-breed Indian squaw, sired by a Virginia mulatto father. He went further to describe the US if Jefferson were president, stating murder, robbery, rape, adultery, and incest will be openly taught and practiced. However, these men became tremendous friends after the election. Geez, what a insult. 2 times is enough for any man. 22nd Amendment. When George Washington was advised he should run for a 3rd term of president, he stated that prudence on part must arrest any attempt of the well-meant but mistaken views of friends to introduce again into this chair of government. His influence was enough to prevent all presidents from seeking a 3rd term until FDR was elected in 1940 and again in 1944. To prevent this from happening again, Congress passed the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution, limiting a president to 2 terms of office. Gadsden Purchase. The United States had plans for a transcontinental railroad, and it appeared the easiest route would run through northern Mexico. The Mexican government was financially strapped after the Mexican-American War and agreed to sell almost 30,000 square miles of land to the United States for $10 million. With this purchase, President Pierce had completed the acquisition of the last territory, which now represents the 48 contiguous United States. Opening Japan to trade. Japan had kept the islands secluded and isolated from the outside world aside from some limited trading with Dutch merchants. This all changed when Fillmore sent Commodore Matthew Perry and a fleet of American warships to force trade agreements. Japan had nothing to match the power of the American fleet in their harbors and agreed to trade and shipping treaties with the Americans, ending Japanese isolation.
That's one way to do it, I suppose. Going outright war to trade with a nation. That's interesting. It's like, I want your hentai. I'm gonna shoot your people if you don't give me your hentai. I'm just joking.
American Antiquities Act of 1906 distressed over the loss of American historical sites. President Teddy Roosevelt passed the American Antiquities Act of 1906. The act authorized the president to protect landmark structures and objects of historic or scientific interest by designating them as national monuments. During his tenure as president, Roosevelt protected approximately 230 million acres of public land by establishing 150 national forests, 51 federal bird reserves, 4 national game preserves, 5 national parks, and 18 national monuments.
Whatever you think of this guy's hunting habits, the reason why we have not industrialized or developed our state parks in America is because they have protected federal land for wildlife.
Military service. 29 of our 45 presidents have served in the United States military. Of these 29, 28 have served as officers. The only president to serve and not be a commissioned officer was James Buchanan. During the War of 1812, Private Buchanan served in 1st Brigade, 4th Division of Pennsylvania Militia, tasked with the defense of Baltimore. John F. Kennedy, James Garfield, William Henry Harrison. Louisiana Purchase. With a revolt in Saint Dominique and continued warfare against the British, the French were afraid of losing all territories in the New World. To prevent such a loss, they offered to sell the Louisiana Territory to the United States for $15 million. Thomas Jefferson, who had long desired control of the Mississippi River, worked tirelessly with James Monroe to secure support of Congress to procure their funds and essentially double the size of the United States.
Okay, so it is Thomas Jefferson. He often traveled to France, I believe, and was a ladies' man over there, apparently. So I've read, so I remember. I actually haven't studied history in a while.
Teapot Dome Scandal. Albert Bacon Fall, Secretary of the Interior under Warren Harding, had allowed several reserves oil to be leased without competitive bidding. The resulting investigation identified that Fall had received a $100,000 loan in return for allowing the lease of the land. The result was Fall becoming the first cabinet member to be sentenced to a prison term and considerable damage to the reputation of Harding's presidency. James Buchanan. This one seems closer up. New Deal. The New Deal was a series of public works projects, financial reforms, and regulations intended to help alleviate the effects of the Great Depression. Among the initiatives were CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, WPA Works Progress Administration, and a bunch of other.
James Garfield. Probably no new information here. This is just shiny stuff. 120 of 299. Did we get James Garfield before? Why is there a scratch here? Martha Washington, Andrew Johnson, and Compromise of 1877. Now, I don't like how they did that because, to be honest, these trading cards are just pieces of information. There really shouldn't be a need for the holographic versions of the cards, but I do believe I have 2 of them. I mean, they might as well make them all holographic or neither, because now I am intrigued in acquiring all the holographics. Let's see the difference between the holographic. The holographic is really only seen on these side paneling. really just the side paneling. So I do like this one. This Martha card.
Martha Washington? Much like her husband, all that Martha Washington would do as First Lady would set precedent for all that followed. Although she simply wanted to live at Mount Vernon with her husband, she accepted the duties of her husband and supported him through the presidency. She hosted affairs and social gatherings to support her husband's efforts as a president.
Oh, I just realized this is a thing. I kind of ruined the thing. I don't know what this is for. Look for cut autographs, historic DNA, hair relic. There's hair in here? That's what the autograph is.
Look for cut autographs and historical DNA hair relics. Approximate odds per pack of finding historic DNA presidential hair relic, 1 in 3,572. Presidential cut autograph, 1 in 10,000. Look for randomly inserted printing plates. All cards are randomly inserted across the production run and not guaranteed in any pack, box, or case.